Hello everybody, welcome back. I'm Strategy Professor, and today we're going to be doing a brand new video, and this is going to be the basics for support. So special thanks to Lucas for sponsoring this. If you'd like to sponsor a video yourself, just email me at thestrategyprofessor@gmail.com. Let me know what you have in mind. I can do any sort of topical guide or champion guide for just $30. If you're not a channel member, if you are a channel member, then it's just $25. You can become a channel member by clicking that join button on YouTube or joining via PayPal. If you prefer that, I'll have a link in the description as well. If you like videos like this, I'll have a link to a guide playlist near the end where you can go through and see a bunch of other content that you enjoy. And we're always adding new guides, new coaching sessions, topical guides, best one-trick video, how to macro better, how to micro better, dodging guides, all of that stuff. And we stream every night on YouTube starting around 11 p.m. Eastern Standard Time, going till about 4 a.m. Very friendly, chill community, so come check that out on YouTube if you want to come hang out with us. Okay, and just as some background, I have been playing support since the end of Season 2. I've been playing since Season 1, and I'm currently a Diamond 4 support as of the making of this video. Okay, let's go ahead and get in here. And I will have a link to this Google Doc in the description, and I'll also have some timestamps. You can jump around your favorite parts, and you're always welcome to speed the video up to 1.25 or 1.5 speed if you want to get through it even faster. Okay, so I'll have a link as well, like how to carry a support. I did a whole video about that last week. But just really quickly, the TLDR of that is supports can carry through efficient itemization, through vision control, because bot lane is very powerful because you have two different players down there, so that's 40% of your team. And there's just a bunch of stuff that goes on kind of behind the scenes with the matchmaking system that can favor supports as well. So part of that is you can never be auto-filled. You're always guaranteed to get either your main role as support or one off role that you pick, but you can never get a random third role. Every other position has to worry about getting auto-filled, getting that third random role. And you're just making people happier when you support most of the time, because that means they don't have to. So then you're removing the highest auto-filled position, which is supporter. It's certainly one of them, which is support. So you're taking a lot of troll people out of your games by opting into playing support. Because if you go mid lane all the time, there's going to be a certain percentage of your games where someone else who wanted to go mid lane gets filled as support, and then they just play something that's extremely off meta, don't take it seriously, or they just get really disheartened and just AFK if you don't do well in the mid lane. So you just get rid of a lot of those shenanigans if you play support, and ultimately that will help you climb. But let's focus on some of the 5 main responsibilities of supports and ways that you can help your team win by playing supports. These are things that beginners can focus on, and I've got a couple of advanced tips in there as well if you played support a little bit. That'll help you out, but I just want to go over some of the basic stuff also. So thinking about lane management, vision and shot calling, rotations, team fights, and then advanced, like playing efficient champs that fit into the meta. So let's talk about lane management first. Okay, so there are 3 different lanes if you're new to the game. You've got top lane, you have mid lane, and bot lane, and then there's a jungler who just kind of roams around. Bot lane, there are going to be 2 people there, and one of the biggest ways to measure how successful someone in League is by their lane management. And there's a few different metrics you can look at for this. The easiest one to look at is just CS, and that means creep score. So all of these minions that come down count as creeps. Jungle monsters also count as creeps and will count towards your creep score. So what that means is basically how many of these things someone on your team has killed, right? So usually with every other position except for support, you're expected to have the highest number possible of these, but support should not be last hitting a lot of stuff. You usually want to take Relic Shield on almost every support, especially if you're new, just because, or the equivalent on the tank side. Just because if you're new, then all you have to do is just last hit some creeps every now and then. You're going to get your money. You don't have to worry about harassment patterns and things like that if you take Frostfang or the Sickle or any of that stuff. So you're not going to be looking at your own creep score to decide how well you're doing in the lane or to kind of measure up that. You're going to be looking at how well your ADC is doing in terms of creep score, and you're not going to have direct control over that. I mean, they might they might just miss a bunch of creeps just out of nowhere, right? But you can influence how well your ADC is going to do, so that's a good way to kind of measure how well are you doing in lane. If your ADCs consistently, every game, if you look at like a 20-game sample size of your past games, and your ADC is always down, 20 CS on the enemy ADC, that means you're doing something that's inefficient as support. Because if you're providing really good support, if you're managing the lane properly, which we're going to talk about here in a second, if you're doing that, then your ADC more times than not should be up on CS versus the enemy ADCs, right? Assuming you're not duoing, right? If it's just random ADCs on both teams constantly for 20 games, if you're playing well as support, your ADCs should be getting more CS than the enemy ADCs. You're going to get a couple of turkeys every now and then, right, that are just auto-filter, they don't know what they're doing. But over the course of many, many games, if you're playing better as a support, then your AD carries on average are going to have more CS. So how do you do this? What are some ways that you can get more creep score? And creep score directly translates into gold, which directly translates into power for your team. Well, first of all, you want to think about how you want to manage the wave in general. And you can influence this some, and once again, the ADC is going to have to, you're going to be relying on them a little bit to try to manage this as well. But what I mean by that is there are basically 3 different positions you can be in the lane. And we're going to assume we're on blue side in this video here. But there is the forward position, which means that you are trying to push the wave into their tower as often as possible. So that means you might see like the creeps over here where they're lining up. So you want to try to push them into the tower as much as you can. Just get them into the tower. Now the advantages of this position are that they're going to be missing CS under tower. They're going to be more likely to miss because the tower is going to be hitting them as well. And this gives you priority, and that's a word that you hear thrown around a lot in League of Legends videos, but what that means is you have the option to move first. So you have the priority to move first. So what this comes down to, and we'll talk about this more with roaming here in a second, but that means that you can go do whatever you want while it's in there, because if they want to follow you, so let's say that you want to go up here and maybe try to ward this area, or maybe like the enemy jungler's up here trying to get the scuttle crab or something and you want to go fight him, that means that if the enemy wants to come over here, if they want to leave, then they're going to lose all of this money at the tower. So pretty much you're putting them in a lose-lose situation when you do that. Either they don't follow and it's more likely you're going to win the fight because they don't come to help, or they do follow and they're losing money at the tower. So that's why priority is so important, and you hear a lot of high-level thinkers talking about that over and over and over again. Getting priority in the lane is because you have the first option to go move, to rotate, to make plays like that happen. Other things you can do when you have priority are you can back. So you can get a really good back timing. So that means that while they're sitting here, last hitting these minions, you can go ahead and get into a bush and get your back timing. And that means that you're going to get back to the lane potentially 5 to 10 seconds faster than they are, because they're going to be finishing up that, killing those minions. So with those 5 to 10 seconds, you can do a lot of stuff. You can show up back to the lane before they get there, and then you're able to push them back in and get priority again. Or in those 5 to 10 seconds, we'll talk about this in the roaming section, you could try to go roam middle, see if you can get a play middle, or at least get some vision around the river or around the enemy jungle, and you're going to be missing less CS. Because they're not going to be back in lane to try to push you in and punish you for going there. So in other words, you get good back timings, which is basically just delayed priority. If you get there 10 seconds faster, that means you're going to be back 10 seconds faster, and you can get priority again. Another thing you can do is if you sweep out the jungle or like this area here, then you can get good ganks off. So if they don't have any vision here, you get a pink ward or something in this bush, you can do what's called a fake back, which is a little bit more advanced. But if you push them in here, then maybe they think that you already backed and they're going to try to push the wave up and maybe come up a little bit more, then boom, you can jump on them outside of this bush and get a good kill on them. So it just puts a lot of pressure on the enemy when you have them in here and you disappear out of vision. You could be roaming middle, you could be backing, you could be sitting in this bush. They just don't know what you're doing, and so they're not going to be able to play as aggressively, and they're not going to be able to make good decisions because you're locking them out of different decisions. So because of this, I think that you'd want to try to play forward as much as possible, as long as you can do it safely. And safely is the key, because if you're pushed up all the way over here and the enemy jungler comes down, you're going to be exposed and you're probably going to die, depending on the situation, right? So in general, I think the worst decision you can do if you push forward a lot of times is to sit here and harass for too long under the tower if you don't know where the jungler is, because that's inviting a gank. But if you just push up and then back up and then go out of vision, either hiding in a bush or rotating or whatever, I think that's the best position to be in. Now, it's okay to come up here, you know, if you're like a Caitlyn, Karma, or just some other kind of poke lane. It's okay to harass them under tower, but you need to make sure that you have the vision there first. If you're going to do that, you need to make sure you have a couple of wards down so you can see if that jungler is coming through. You're going to see him and be able to back up. You can't do that if you don't know where the jungler is, okay? But I think if managed properly, that's the best thing to do in the bot lane, okay? And part of that is because, once again, a big part of it is the vision game. As a support, you need to be roaming, and you need to be at least putting down vision places, right? So when you have them in tower like that, you can go over here, put some vision here, put some vision here, and then you can get back before the minions get back. So that way you're not missing experience, and it's a lot less likely they're going to chase after you because they're in the tower. This is different from other lanes. If you watch guides on top lane or mid lane, a lot of these high-level challenger guides, they'll be talking about trying to freeze the lane. And what a freeze is, I can just show you in the bot lane as well if you were to try to freeze. What a freeze is you want the minions usually to stop outside of your tower. So, an example of this is if they're pushed up, you try to freeze these minions right here so that the tower doesn't hit them, and the enemy's going to be over here, and you're just trying to hold the minions right here. Now, the reason you would want to do this, there's a couple of reasons. And this is going to be the back position. So we'll just go ahead and skip ahead a little bit and talk about the back position. So this is where you try to freeze outside of your tower, and you are relatively protected from dives. So if they have like a Leona Draven, it's a lot harder to engage on you because you're near the tower. It's a lot more dangerous. It's a lot more harder to get ganked, or it's a lot harder to get ganked. Now, it can still happen. They can still dive you in the right circumstances, 3v2 if their jungler comes in. But it's a lot more difficult to kill you under tower than it would be, say, in this position where, you know, they could loop around behind you and get you like that, right? So it's harder to kill you under tower, but not impossible, right? So this is just kind of a safe position. If you're just getting completely blasted in lane, this is usually thought of as a weaker position than if you were to push up, right? Versus top lane, this can be a position of power because you can zone them off easier in top lane. So if we're pretending there was just one person in this lane, right? If this would be like a top lane, you have them right here. Let's say you're really strong, you're a Darius or something like that, and the enemy is like a Camille or something in the early game. If you're really far ahead, you could actually step up to something like right here and zone them off of this wave so that they can't even get any minions. And then you just keep the wave frozen here, you can zone them off, and you're denying them a lot of CS. They're losing experience potentially, they're losing gold, you're getting further and further ahead. So that's why zoning off in the top lane especially is very good if you can freeze outside your tower and zone. And it also makes them more vulnerable to ganks, right? So like your jungler, if this was the jungler, your jungler could come in and gank them like that, right? So they might be so scared of your jungler, even if you're not fully zoning them, that they're going to have to back up or play super cautiously because the jungler could come in and gank. So that's why you might hear challengers or pros talk about zoning in the top lane, but not zoning in the bot lane, because in the bot lane, you have the responsibility of vision. You have to get vision up, you have to protect the dragon, and it's two people, which means it's just going to be a lot harder to manage those zones, and it's going to be a lot harder to completely force somebody off of minions unless you're super far ahead. Mid lane, similar, right? You can play it in different ways in mid lane. But in the bot lane, you want to push because you want to get those vision. You want to get the vision opportunities. You want to get the roaming opportunities. In mid, the meta right now is you do want to push and get priority most of the time so that you can go roam. Top lane, you're not roaming. You're sitting there, you're farming, and if you do need to roam, you're usually doing it with a teleport. So just throwing that disclaimer in there, in case you're wondering, why is the strategy professor saying to push over and over and over again, but this Pro Guides video said that pushing is for noobs and you should try to zone people out. That's why. Because it depends on the lane, and it depends on how the lane's going. It also depends on your elo to a certain extent. It's much better to push in lower elo if you're like, not necessarily low, you know, not to insult anybody, but you know, if it's like platinum and lower, and definitely like gold and lower, you want to be pushing up because people are more likely to miss CS, they're more likely to mismanage the situation. And yes, if you have them, you know, if you're able to freeze outside of your tower, yes, it is easier for ganks, but guess what? If your jungler never comes bottom, it doesn't matter, right? That's not an advantage. So in higher elos, you know, there are certain compositions and certain game states where you might want to freeze to get your jungler to come down here to make a specific play around a dragon timing, or, you know, things like that. It gets much more complicated in terms of the team compositions, stuff like that. But usually you only want to get into this position if it's a very difficult lane, if you're getting busted up, because the inverse is true for the enemy, right? If they have you pushed in, now they're in a forward position. That means they get all their vision around the dragon. They get to ward up your jungle. They get to clean out all of your wards, and then their jungler is going to have priority to do something like dragon, right? If they push you in a tower, they can rotate, go get that dragon. So it's going to put a lot of pressure on your vision. It's going to put a lot of pressure on the dragon. It's going to put a lot of pressure on your mid laner, because if their support roams up and ganks mid lane, you can't really answer. So it's just a lot harder. Honey, what is all that clanging? Sorry about that. I don't know how much you could hear that in the other rooms, like freaking rattling pots and pans around or something. But the sound carries really well because we have this kind of vinyl tile. Anyways, so yeah, you want to try to be in the forward position. You only want to take that defensive position if you're in a losing situation. And then there's kind of a and then they could also fake back on you. They could, get a preferable back timing or hide in your bush and catch you when you come out. It just creates all kinds of problems. So sometimes, I've duoed with people in the past that are just like, oh, we need to freeze here. We need to freeze. Like, no. You do not want to freeze most of the time bottom lane unless you have to. It should be like, you don't want to do it, but it's a necessity because you're getting crushed by Draven Leona right now or something like that. Okay, the other position is kind of this mid position where you want to keep it in the middle of the lane. The only reason you would really want to keep it here is if you have a hard engage comp. So if you're running Leona or Nautilus or just something else that just wants to get in there and try to go for kills, you want it in the middle so that you have time to run them down, right? If you're a Leona right here, we'll just throw that up here. If you're a Leona right here, right, you want to be sitting in this bush, and then that way when they come up, you can engage on them, and then the ADC can go here, and then once you do that, they're going to flash out, and you want room to be able to run them down after they flash, right? So that can go for Nautilus or Blitzcrank or whoever. If you're a hard engage champ, you do want to come up, and you can potentially zone with that hard engage. I would still say that you want to zone from a mid position rather than a back position, just so that you have opportunities to roam if you want to do that. So that is possible to create threat, and we'll talk about generating threat here in a second. So that's really the only time, is if you're playing a hard engage and you think you're in a dominant lane position, but you don't want to push them all the way in because you want some runway. You want some room to get on them and run them down. Because if you're playing something like a Leona Draven and you push them all the way into the tower, well, then they can just hide over here, and it's going to be very difficult for you to engage, right? Because the tower can kill you early on. Now, that does set up an opportunity to dive if your jungler comes down, but that's really a much more advanced setup, right? Like, a lot of times you can't count on that in gold for your jungler to identify, hey, we have a dive opportunity bottom, let me path bottom and dive in 30 seconds, right? As they build up a slow push wave. That's not going to happen, really. So you're just going to be sitting here, doing a bunch of nothing as Leona or Nautilus if you're like this, because you can't go in because there's a tower there until you get really, like, a lot of armor and really geared. So anyway, so that would be when you want to hold it in the middle, is if you have a hard engage comp and you're looking for kills. So you don't care about the priority, you don't care about roaming and kills as much. You're just looking to get those grabs, you're looking to get those kills. Okay. Now you want to try to generate as much threat. This is also part of lane management. So whatever, it depends on what your champ is, but whatever they do, you want to try to work that to your advantage. So if it's a poke champ, if it's like a Sona or a Nami, even a Janna, any of these range type of champs, whenever their ADC goes up to try to last hit something, you need to just hit them. Just like they walk up to last hit a minion, you hit them with a Janna W, you hit them with a Sona Q, you hit them with an auto attack. Whatever it is you can do, you just want to punish them. Because every time they auto attack, you know where they are, right? They have to stand still, they have to do their auto attack animation, and you know that auto attack is going towards a minion. So right there, you're already advantaged. So if you walk up and auto attack them, you're going to get the first 50 damage on them. And if you hit them with abilities, that's even more. Especially if you're taking like Airy and Scorch and these other kind of poke abilities, that's what you want to do. And you'll wear them out like that. Now you do have to be careful because you will get minion aggro when you do that. So, if they have like 12 minions and you only have 3 minions, you need to be very careful that if you walk up to go for this harassment, you're going to be getting beaten down with these other minions. And you want to make sure that you're not getting hit with skill shots. So, like if there's a Blitzcrank here and there's almost no minions here, you walk up, you try to, hit somebody with a Janna W and Blitzcrank grabs you, you're probably going to die. So be careful around the minions, but the default position, your mentality should be, I want them to pay for every CS. They want a CS, they're taking an auto attack, or they're taking an ability, whatever you can throw at them. You're just harassing them as much as you possibly can. You do not want to sit there and just let them CS, right? Now, sometimes, once again, you got to be, reasonably cautious. If it's Ezreal, if you have an Ezreal ADC and you're playing Janna and they have Draven Leona and the Leona standing right in the middle of this wave, yes, you can't walk up to that because that's really spooky and she could kill you. Okay, but I'm just saying the default position, you should be looking for opportunities to hit them every time they CS. Okay, because once again, you know where they are and they're going to be using one of their auto attacks to CS. Okay, so just generating threat that way, and you can generate threat just off of your presence, especially on these like hook or hard engaged champs, right? So if you are if you're a Blitzcrank, let's say your ADC's over here, just sitting in this bush, if it's unwarded, generates a massive amount of threat, right? Because if these minions are up a little bit, you're like right here, and you can get into this bush, they have to respect that, right? If they don't have vision, and you hook one of them, it's going to be a big deal. So don't be too far up, right? Like, you still want to be in range for your ADC to help you. So you don't want to like zone them all the way up to here and sit in this bush as a support, right? Because then you're just too isolated and they're going to come down and kill you. But just as much as you can, just look scary. If you're the Leona in this situation, if you're Leona and Draven and you're against Ezreal and Janna, and that Janna's just sitting here, you need to walk up close to this wave as Leona and just say, look, bro, if you come up to this wave, there's a chance I'm going to get you, right? So that's just scaring them. So it might scare them back, especially if they're low. They're like 50% health or something. You can just standing close by can create enough threat to where they have to back up and respect you. So whatever it is, whatever your champion does, just try to look as menacing as possible. Just generate as much threat as possible. Just make them scared that you're gonna, put a big hurting on them, right? If they come up and try to do anything. And the same thing, don't let the enemy support do that to you, right? So if their support's over here, and they're trying to harass your ADC with their abilities, whenever your ADC is last hitting, just say, I'm not gonna allow that. I'm gonna walk up. I'm gonna look menacing. I'm gonna look threatening. Or I'm gonna trade with them, right? If you're playing something like a Soraka, and they're playing something like a Lulu, and their Lulu keeps trying to hit your ADC, don't let that happen. Say, hey, Lulu, you want to mess with somebody, you mess with me. And then you trade with the Lulu. You walk up, you auto-attack, you hit them with your Q, you trade. Just buy some pressure for your ADC. And sometimes you might have to soak pressure even if you're losing trades. So if they just keep hitting your ADC with these point-click Janna Ws, if you look at your comp and champ select, you might need to take an extra magic resist rune and take second wind or biscuits or something else and just say, hey, I'm going to be eating Janna W's early because I don't want my ADC to have to eat that. So just maybe get a either a fairy charm or a reju bead or something and just plan on soaking those Janna W's if you have a really weak lane. And sometimes that happens. So just think to yourself, hey, I need to absorb some of this pressure off of my ADC. I need to be the one taking these hits. I need to be the one, trying to generate pressure, and that will free up your ADC. Because in the past, if you just sat back here with Soraka and just let the ADC eat all of that harassment while they're farming, they're gonna get injured, they're gonna get scared, they're gonna have to back up. That means they're missing CS, and that's why your team might consistently have lower CS in the bot lane than the enemy team, is because you're not aggressive enough. So you need to get up and as safely as possible, get up there, take those hits, harass their ADC, or at least screen the enemy support off of you. Just do whatever you can to generate as much threat and pressure as possible. The final thing that I'll talk about here in terms of back timings is you need to try to push the wave anytime you back, right? So anytime that you want to back, if at all possible, you need to just use your abilities on the wave, just spam all of your abilities. If they're not going to be able to punish you for it, just push them in, get them in the tower, and that's when you back. You really don't want to back randomly. So like if the wave's here in the middle, unless it's like code red, like you're about to die, you really don't just want to back and give them a chance to push you in. Because if they push you in, then you're going to be missing CS, you're missing experience, and then they're going to have priority to go do something else on the way back. So make sure that whenever you back, you have it pushed in. Ideally, people say if you're going to reset, it should be a cannon minion, because the cannon minion can soak a ton of tower hits before it dies. So ideally you want to back when a cannon wave is coming in, and you can always see where your wave is too, and you know where the enemy's wave is as well, because if your wave's like right in here, right, and you're backing up, you can look and see if it's a cannon wave. If your wave's coming in and backing up, then you know their wave is around that same area as well. So it's going to be symmetrical, obviously, as it comes in. But yeah, try to back on a cannon wave if possible, but otherwise just definitely push them into the tower before you back. Don't let injured opponents leave for free. I see this sometimes. People are like, well, I have enough gold for my BF sword, time to back. It's like, no. If like the enemy is sitting here, if the enemy's sitting here and they have like, 10% health, sometimes I see people push in and, the ADC's like, oh, well, I got a back, I got a BF sword. No, you don't. If they're really low, you hold them there. You keep that chokehold on them. You do not let them out of that lane for free. They're the people that are going to be losing CS, right? So do not let them out for free. Keep them in the lane. Keep the pressure on them, especially if you have a lot of resources and they don't. Do not let them back. Even if you have a certain buy timing, you have a BF sword, you have a Billish Water, whatever it is, don't let them out of that, right? Unless there's a very, very good reason to do it, do not let them out, okay? So if they are injured, you keep them there. You force them to take the bad back. Because what it is a lot of people just stay even when they're really low, because they'll just be too stubborn. And if they're really low when it comes out, that's when you can go for the ultra zone, right? If they're at like 10% HP, that's where you come out with both the support and ADC. You just ping this and you just stand in front of the minions and you say, no, y'all are backing or you're going to keep losing CS. And some people will be so greedy, the ADC might be, well, I've only got 1100 gold, I don't have a BF sword, I'm at 10% health, but I guess I gotta stay. Hey, some people overstay and they take a lot of punishment. So just don't give them a free back if they're really injured. Okay? By the flip side, don't you overstay too. Sometimes, if they just constantly are pushing you in over and over again, but you're at 5% health, you might just have to back and just lose the CS. Okay. Yeah, try a little bit more advanced, but if you can time your back timing around certain objectives, like dragons coming up in 30 seconds, see if you can get a back in so you can go contest. Or if your ADC has a big ticket item, they have a Blade of the Ruined King that's ready, or if you have a big ticket item, you have an Ardent Censer or something like that you can get, just try to force and get a back timing. Just push, and get a back timing. How do you know if the enemy has or if your ally has a Blade of the Ruined King or not? You press tab, you look, you see they have something like a Bilge Water, and you just kind of have to guess. We've been in lane for like 5 minutes. They've got a lot of CS. They probably have a Blade of the Ruined King. One way you can do this is ping your gold. So ping your gold a few times. You can do that. Just, control, ping your gold. Just let them know how much gold you have, and then, try to back in a bush. And then a lot of times they'll ping how much gold they have, and they'll let you know, right? Okay, I've got the finished Blade of the Ruined King. Or if they don't have it, they might ping you and tell you that they don't have it. So that's a good way just to check in with them and just let them know. Because sometimes people are just on autopilot and they'll just stay in the lane forever and, they don't back for specific power spikes. So just try to look for that. That's a little bit more advanced, but if you can, try to do that. We'll speed this up. I don't want the video to be too long. I do have other separate videos about a lot of these different concepts. If you want more in-depth lane management, I have a whole lane management video. I have a whole vision video. So this is just kind of like a little bit of faster stuff. Okay, so vision and shot calling. You want to try to get the best safe vision that you can. And we'll go ahead and reset this here. But you want to get the best safe vision. Now, I have safe underlined because sometimes you just have to take what the enemy is going to give you. Because you got to remember, wards don't just magically appear on the map. You have to walk there, and a lot of times it is very dangerous if you walk there. And in solo queue, people are not going to back you up half the time, right? They're not going to come with you to go ward. Sometimes they might, but sometimes they may not. So you have to think of your champion too. Some champions are a lot safer than others. So someone like Rakan and Pyke, they can go ward much deeper in the enemy jungle because they have a lot of escapes. They can jump over walls, they're fast, they just have a lot of mobility. Versus if you're playing something like a Sona or a Soraka, that's very unsafe. If you get caught out, then you may not be able to ward. So for example, let's say that, you push the wave in here, you're not sure where the enemy jungler is. Yeah, it's over here. And let's say that you're not sure where the enemy jungler is, right? And let's say that they're playing something that's kind of spooky, but not just like insane. I don't know, maybe a Nunu or something like over here, right? So you're not sure where they are, and then you're thinking, okay, where can I go ward? Well, if you're not sure where they are, if you're playing something like Rakan, you might be able to come over here, place a ward here, place a ward here, and place a ward here. So these are my favorite spots if you're on blue side, is you just come up this river, ward this. You can put a pink ward there too if you want. That's an excellent pink ward spot. A lot of people won't check that as much as they should, especially in lower elos. So that's a great pink ward spot. Then you can use your other green ward over here. But if you want to come over here, if you don't know where the jungler is and you're Rakan or Pyke, yeah, you can place these wards. But if you don't know and you're like Soraka or Sona and you're not sure where they are, then you're going to have to be a lot more cautious, right? Maybe you have to slide that ward down to here and, you know, you just got to give up on this ward. You know, you might have to do something like this. So it just depends on how dangerous the situation is. Depends on, like, if you've swept the area, right? If you're sweeping this area in here, you know, if you know there aren't wards there, and you know there aren't wards there, if you use a sweeper and go through here, then yeah, maybe you can ward a little bit deeper. But if you're not sure, you just kind of have to assume this might be warded, because they could, you know, even if you've had them pushed in all game, the support could still, you know, come over here and drop a ward over this wall into this brush right here, right? So that could be warded. So you got to be, you just got to get as much vision as safely as you can on the map. And one of the main things you want to think of in terms of visions are, you want it around points of interest. So what that means is, where are people going to go? Where's the action right now? What do I want? So if it's early in the game, you know, you might want to place those wards in the spots that I said. Right here is a really good point of interest because they're going to be farming. The jungler is going to want their Gromp and they're going to want their blue buff. So if you have it right there, you know. This right here is also a major point of interest because that's a ramp, and that also keeps an eye on this blast cone, so you'll know if this blast cone is up or not. And by the way, you should always kill that blast cone. If you're on blue side and you see that thing right there, hit the blast cone with an auto attack, because especially for some junglers, that can mess up their entire gank, right? If it's something like a Vi coming down here, and she gets to blast cone over and then use her Q to engage, that's a lot more scary than if she has to use her Q to jump over this wall and then wall catch you. Right, so knocking out that blast cone is a big deal. So just keeping an eye on that. And then like right here, if you can ever get a ward in this little junction here, and I like just warding over this wall to get it, this is a major point of interest as well, because these are 3 different intersections, and this is very heavily trafficked. It's unlikely that they're going to be able to gank mid lane from the right side of the map if you have a ward in here somewhere. So those are like really good points of interest early on. Obviously, you know, anywhere around Dragon, if Dragon's up, is going to be a good point of interest. Usually you want to use a pink ward there if you can to clear out that dragon. But that can be a good point of interest. And then somewhere like, you know, this little pixel brush can be okay, especially defensively if you want to keep an eye on the scuttle, or you're worried that they might invade, or you're worried that your mid laner or their mid laner might roam. This is another good one right here. It's a defensive one. If their mid laner keeps roaming on you and they keep just dominating your mid laner, for example, you know, they are Nunu or Twisted Fate or something, and they just push in and then try to roam around behind and get you like that, then just putting it right here on this ramp, because it'll watch this, just in case they pull one of these little things, push in and roam that way. And it also watches if they come in that way. So I really like this ward if it's defensive, if they're being very sneaky. Now, usually this is going to spot if they come and like try to go this way. A lot of times they'll walk over part of that. If you put that like right on the corner here, then it's going to see it if they come through, just for a little bit though. But anyways, it kind of depends on what's going on. It's like, are they coming around behind you or not? If you're not sure, just do the default that I just talked about. Just try to ward their camps. Whenever possible, get wards on those camps, because they're going to have to go there to farm. So they can be as sneaky and have the trickiest pathing in the world, you know, to try to sneak around things, but they're eventually going to have to farm their camps. So if you have wards on the camps, this is especially important against things like Evelynn that are invisible otherwise. You really don't want to try to ward those camps up. Then otherwise, you know, just think what's going on in the next couple of minutes, right? Is Baron up? If Baron's up, you need vision around Baron. So if you're on blue side, a couple of good, you know, warding places for that are here. And then right here's a really good one, just because a lot of times they'll have a pink ward over here. They'll sweep this all the time, so it's not a very safe ward unless you're in a super dominant position. And then something like right here is pretty good too. So these are all 3 pretty good places to keep track of that. If you need more defensive wards, if you can't get as deep into their jungle, you know, then getting a ward here, like here, and here can be a pretty good defensive option. So I have a whole vision video. Be sure to go check that out on the channel. But just in general, just think about what do you want to do. Another thing is if you have a really strong split pusher. So for example, let's say that your top laner is really strong. They're dominating. It's a Darius or something like that. They have their top laner pushed in. Then you can come up there if you're like, hey, that guy's really fed. I want to help protect him. You can go up and drop vision for him. So maybe, You just come up, put vision here, here, and then like, you know, right there or something, right? So just providing vision for your top laner because they're the main point of interest. They're the strongest thing. That's where people are going to go gank. And you can even go up there yourself, like later on in the game. You know, if this top laner is pushing in all the time and you think you can win a 2v2 if someone comes up there, you can even come up there and just hide in like one of these bushes or something. And then, you know, their jungler comes up. They think that they're going to, you know, kill your top laner. And then you roll up and turn it around. So there are a lot of different options you can do with that. But yeah, just put your vision around where you think the action's going to be. Okay, and then you want to try to shot call as much as possible as well. So just ping information, as much information as you can give to your team, ping it. It's important, even if a lot of people don't listen to all of your information, you just want to give them as much info as possible. So the number one and the easiest thing to start with, and I've got these kind of like in descending order of importance. So start with this top one, and then as you get more comfortable with that, work your way down. So start off by pinging your own movements and cooldowns. If you're going to rotate mid lane, ping mid lane. Let people know that you're coming. If you want to fight maybe in 20 seconds because you're playing Leona and your ult's going to be off cooldown, ping your ult a couple of times. So ping it, you know, let them know, hey, I've got 20 seconds on ult. Look at your ignite. Say, hey, my ignite's up in 30 seconds. Let's just wait 30 seconds and then we'll do this fight. So just look at your ultimate, look at your cooldowns on your summoners, and go ahead and ping and convey that information. If you're rotating somewhere, let your team know. Even if you're just going to go ward, you know, because that can happen, right? Sometimes, you know, your ADC, maybe they're on autopilot, maybe they're just chilling, and, you know, they're not paying attention to what you're doing. You push them in, and then you're over here, and you just want to go ward. You need to ping them, let them know. Just ping right here. Just say, hey, I'm going to go ward. Ping them back. Press the back ping here like 2 or 3 times, and then just ping over here, and just let them know that you're going to go ward that. Right? Because sometimes if you don't say that, if you just walk out of the lane, you know, they may not notice. You know, especially at kind of some lower elo brackets, they may not notice. They're just sitting there listening to music. Maybe they're talking to their roommate, you know, or just whatever. Maybe they're texting somebody. Who knows what they're distracted? They're watching Netflix on a second monitor. Who knows? Right? So you just want to let them know, hey, I'm not going to be there anymore for like 5 seconds. Back up. Now, will some ADCs die anyways, get engaged on die anyways? Yeah, of course. But I'll guarantee you that will happen less often if you communicate it. Right? Ping major objectives. So just let people know, hey, Dragon's coming up in 1 minute. Hey, Baron's coming up in 1 minute. Hey, Scuttle's coming up, you know, here in like 20 seconds when the Scuttle turns gold. It's like 15 seconds before it comes up. Just ping that. Ping the assist. Say, hey, come help me out with Dragon. Come help me out with Baron. Ping your wards. Maybe they won't help you ward, but maybe they will. So like ping your control wards and then ping assist around Baron or around Dragon so they know, I want to go ward that. Come help me. Once again, maybe they will, maybe they won't. But at least you're giving them the information to make an informed decision. Right? Ping enemy movements, especially the jungler. If you see the jungler ever, even if you see it, don't assume they see it, right? And I'm guilty of doing this a lot. Or at least much more than I should be. But like, if you see the enemy jungler, right? You see him down here. He's doing Gromp. Ping that. If your ADC especially is just like, you know, dead set right here, just like pushed in, harassing under tower over and over again. You see a Fiddlesticks coming down here like this. You need to say back up, and ping right here. Ping Fiddlesticks, press tab, ping Fiddlesticks, because he's going to jump over this wall and kill you all if you don't do that. So just anytime you see the jungler or the mid laner, right? If you're over here watching and you see, okay, mid laner just left mid, and especially if they walk on a ward, you need to ping that. Ping your ADC, back. And that way, you know, maybe you can save their life. So just watch it, just let them know. Even if you're not sure where the jungler is, still just ping back, and then just ping, you know, the jungler's portrait. So if you don't know where Fiddlesticks is, but your ADC is pushed up really hard, and you haven't seen Fiddlesticks in a while, and you just kind of have a spidey sense, hey, he might be down here. This is like Fiddlesticks' favorite spot in the whole game to gank from, probably, is over this wall in the mid lane. You know, just ping and let them know. Ping back on bad fights, right? So like, for instance, if your team is, you know, let's say that you have some people grouping up here, and let's say it's your jungler is going for a flank and they want to gank, but let's say that your top laner doesn't have teleport and they're still in the base, they're walking over here, but they're not there yet. You know, just ping back a lot. Just let the enemy team don't go, because if you engage, then you might die. right? So just let them know, ping back before a bad fight happens. Just ping back a lot, and then ping your top laner. Say ping, 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 and then ping back, so that they know you don't have your top laner. Because once again, people autopilot. They don't notice, oh, we're missing a person. We don't have 5 people here. They probably have 5 people here. So just ping that. Maybe the jungler goes. Once again, I know there's going to be people that are watching this like, oh, my jungler always does stupid stuff, or my ADC always does stupid stuff. It's like, yeah, maybe. But look, the more often you do this, the less likely they are to do those things. It's not going to take the percentage down to 0. I'll guarantee you, if you communicate everything perfectly, there will still be people that don't get the message, that make bad decisions, but there will be less of that, okay? So it's not about taking the mistakes down to 0. It's about taking it from, like, 50% bad decisions down to, 35% bad decisions, right? That's still a 15%, gain in good decisions, right? Which might lead to an extra 5% win rate or something for you. So it can be a very big deal. Then some advanced pings. You can ping items if you're a little bit more advanced. So just ping, like maybe you ping that the enemy only has a BF sword and you have a completed Blade of the Ruined King. So ping your ADC's Blade of the Ruined King, ping the enemy's BF sword, let them know, hey, we can fight. Or, sometimes even more importantly, let them know we can't fight, right? If you're playing against a Draven and he's 0-3 and the enemy Aphelios is 3-0 and they have a completed Infinity Edge and you're still sitting on BF Sword plus Vamp Scepter, just ping your Draven back and say, hey, don't do it. He has an Infinity Edge, right? Once again, will he always listen? No. But is he more likely to listen? Yes. Okay, so just ping those items. Let people know what's going on. And then you can ping allies' cooldowns as well. So this is another one that's more advanced. But you can ping the teleport. You can ping the teleport from your top laner and say, hey, our teleport doesn't have, or our top laner doesn't have teleport for 30 seconds, so don't fight for 30 seconds because we need that TP. Or you can ping smite. Say someone's trying to call Baron, say, hey, go do Baron, 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 but you just saw your jungler use his smite in the middle of that fight. Press tab, see, hey, they don't have a second smite charge, they don't have smite, don't do it, right? And then just ping back because you don't have a smite if it's a bad decision, right? Or maybe you can ping the ultimate timer of your ally. So maybe people are thinking about starting a fight, you can see the little hourglass and you see, oh, our Amumu doesn't have ult for another 10 seconds, just ping that. Just ping it like 3 times and let people know 10 seconds on Amumu ult. So you can communicate the cooldowns of your allies as well as your own cooldowns if you just ping it. So just try to watch as many of those things as possible and communicate all that information. Last couple of things here. Rotations. So roam only if your probability of success is high. I have people ask me all the time, on stream, when should I be roaming? When should I be roaming? And the answer is there's not a simple answer to that. And I know that's what people don't want to hear. You do want the simple answer. But there are guidelines. So I can't tell you what's perfect in every situation, but I can tell you some ideas to consider before you roam, right? So the main thing about roaming is you always want there to be a very high probability of success because there's always an opportunity cost, right? Whenever you leave lane, you're missing experience, you're missing gold potentially. Not as much of a thing with support because you don't have to last hit. That's why supports are so great at roaming because you're not missing any CS. But you are putting your ADC at risk. So you need to be very careful. So a couple of things to think about. Is the lane forward? Remember that the forward position is where you want to be most of the time on your lane. So if you have them pushed up and they're under the tower, then that's the best time to roam, right? So if you're thinking, hey, I want to go roam mid lane because their mid laner's really far pushed up, maybe it's a Yasuo or something, he's just pushed up, he's aggressive, and you have like a Malzahar or a Lissandra or just something else with a lot of lockdown CC, you're playing Leona, Nautilus, something else with high kill threat, then just communicate that, push it in, roam up here, and then you can potentially get a kill, okay? But just keep in mind, your ADC is very vulnerable right here. So if you have like a Kog'Maw or a Twitch or something like that, and they're playing Draven Leona, you got to be very scared, right? It's very difficult for your Twitch to last hit whenever that's happening. He's going to have to stand very far back because they can engage and kill him, right? So keep that in mind. Versus if they're playing something like, Vayne Janna or something like that, and you have an Ezreal here, and he can just kind of safely last hit from a distance, with his Q, that's a lot better of a situation, right? Because they're going to have a lot less threat for an engage, and your ADC might be able to farm. Now, keep in mind, this can, if you do this a lot, it can really take a toll on the mental of your ADC as well, right? So I remember one time I was on red side and I roamed mid and we got kills 3 times in a row. I don't remember who I was playing. It was like maybe Janna or something like that. But I roamed middle and we got kills 3 times in a row. They had just been pushing us into tower over and over again, right? So our ADC had just been farming here. It was like I don't know, a Tristana Lulu or something. I don't remember what it was. And I pressed tab and the CS was the same, right? The CS, you know, our AD carry was maybe down 5 CS. So he wasn't missing anything. And I had just farmed up our Diana or something, had 3 kills and was now crushing mid lane. And the ADC said, if you leave lane one more time, I'm AFK. And I said, you know, I typed in chat, we got 3 kills, you're even on CS. And then he said, I don't care. Now, this was before I disabled chat. Now I have chat disabled. But that just goes to show you, sometimes people just freak out. They're just so selfish, and they don't understand how the game's working, that sometimes even a good play like that can, like, it just makes the ADC feel like they're alone, and they're not able to do what they want to do, and so they'll throw a little fit about it, okay? So, you got to keep that in mind. That roaming can be good, but you need to make sure that it is optimal, and you know, you got to read the situation, right? And you might have to take the mental consideration of your ADC into account as well. But aside from that, just make sure that it's pushed up so you're not missing experience, and just make sure you have a good chance to act, like, is the ADC safe, and is it likely a kill, right? Like, if you're pushing them in here, and then you're thinking, you know, they just have the wave position in the middle here, and, you know, it's like a Cassidon or a Zed or something. It's like, you're not going to catch that. Like, they're going to get away, right? Or like a LeBlanc. Like, you're not going to catch that. And you're trying to roam up there and, like, make a play with Janna or something. Or if your mid laner's like a Cassidon or just something else that's not bringing any, like, CC or help to the table, you're probably not making that happen, right? So just make sure it's a high probability of success if you're going to roam. Make sure your ADC is safe, and make sure you're not missing too much gold and experience by doing so, right? Now, if there are opportunity moments, then yeah, definitely look for it. So, for example, if your ADC is pinging, hey, their blue buff's coming up, I want to go fight them. Let's say you've already established good vision in this area, right? So you've already got your vision set up, and your jungler's wanting to make a play on their blue. Then yeah, go ahead, use all your abilities, push, and then just rotate up here, you know, with your jungler and potentially try to make that play. Or if there's just like a random fight breaking out, right? Like maybe your jungler's fighting their jungler for the second scuttle crab here. Yeah, just run up there immediately. So if there are opportunity moments where you can join a fight and turn it around, then yes, that's a good play a lot of the time, especially if it's just like mid-river or like maybe in the jungle. But if you're trying to roam all the way to mid lane to make your own play, you know, consider that carefully. Something like Nautilus, that's a very high probability of success, right? Because your R is on a low cooldown, it's going to hit them, they can't really flash away from it. Or Leona, you know, it's going to be difficult to get away. So you just have to read the situation. Or if you know that their mid laner's flash is gone, right? So if they just flashed and they died 30 seconds earlier and you're walking up there with Nautilus, you know they're probably dead again because they don't have flash, right? So there's no way they're getting out of it. So you just got to kind of read the situation, think about who has cooldowns, who doesn't. You know, even if it's a Malzahar middle, make sure he has ult. You know, if you roam all the way up there and he doesn't have ult, you know, it's going to be a difficult kill. Or if, like, your Zed doesn't have ult, you're probably not going to be able to make it happen. So just look at the summoners, look at the cooldowns, like, assess the situation, and see if it makes sense. If you're not sure about that, if that's a lot of calculations, my suggestion, if you're golden lower, do not roam that often unless it's an opportunity fight that's a high probability of success. So just do not try to roam middle by yourself. Just only look for those chances while the lane's still there to, you know, go fight for scuttle or just get vision. If your jungler is invading, or if you're getting invaded by the enemy jungler, you know, then you can look for those opportunities to go roam and help people, right? So kind of like you're helping a situation that's already happening. That's fine, that's good. But just making your own play by trying to roam mid out of nowhere, you have to do so many of those calculations, and you have to have so much experience, like I just discussed. I really wouldn't recommend it if you're golden lower, unless you played a lot of support games and you're just really familiar with that. Okay, so I know there are all these like all caps videos. You gotta roam all the time. That's what this Challenger #1 support does. He roams, he plays Thresh, he plays Nautilus, he's roaming 24/7. It's like, yes, but he understands all of that really, really well, and it's difficult to make those decisions unless you have a lot of experience. And if you're in Challenger games, people are going to play around that, right? Your ADC is going to know how to play safer. Your mid laner is going to know how to manage their cooldowns. You're going to know how to manage their cooldowns, right? So you're going to synchronize that and say, okay, you know, the Zed's got Ignite, the Zed's got his ultimate, the Nautilus has his ultimate. We know we're going to be able to make this play happen. It's just a lot harder to make that happen in lower elo brackets. Okay. And in the mid game, try to default to staying near the middle of the map as far as rotations go. And the main reason for this is that just allows you the best opportunities to potentially roam. So usually the ADC and the support go to the middle, and then you have your top laner and your mid laner going to the side lanes a lot of times to push stuff up. That's kind of where you want to be. So in other words, you know, when this bot tower breaks, you don't want to be like up here with your ADC trying to farm most of the time unless you're both like super fed. You don't want to be down there because like what'll happen is they can make a play on the other side of the map with their support, and it's going to take you too long to rotate to go get that. So if you're just down here watching your ADC farm, there's no point in you being there. So you should really be middle, and this also gives you the best opportunities to get vision, right? So whenever you know, potentially push up, let's say your jungler comes over here and helps you out, you push up, you get them pushed in, now you can get better opportunities, right? So now, particularly around Baron, when Baron's up in the mid game, now you can go over there and get those wards, you know, on Baron. You can sweep, you know, you can sweep all these bushes where all the action's going on, make sure this is clear. So it's just, that's the best place where you want to be, you know, 9 times out of 10 on support is in the middle, controlling vision, looking for opportunities in side lanes if it happens. You know, depending on what your champ is, whether it's an engaged champ or whether it's a peeler champ, that's just kind of where you want to default to most of the time. Okay, rotations. Okay, we just did that one. Team fights, and we're almost out of time here, so I'll make this a little bit faster. You know, just think about what is your champion trying to do, right? If it's an engaged champ, if it's a hook champ, a lot of times you're going to be the primary engage. So you want to think, okay, who do I engage on? Who do I need to try to get? Am I going for their ADC? Am I going for their support? Am I going for whomever, right? Now, a lot of times these are opportunity targets, right? So you're just going to have vision established everywhere, and then their mid laner. Go ahead and clean up that mess there. Let's say that their mid laner is, you know, pathing over here, and you have vision right here, and then you're just like, you know, you got them pushed up, and now you're sitting over here. You think they're going to go check Baron. You and the jungler are sitting here. You have the lane pushed up here. Their mid laner, usually it's a support you can catch out who's trying to go get vision by themselves. So often it's a support you can pick off, but maybe it's the mid laner, who knows. But usually those engaged champs, the best plays you can make are picks, right? Because it's a really high probability of success. You grab somebody, you isolate them, you kill them, and then you go make a play. That's the easiest thing. Now you can, you know, say, okay, we're all A-ramming middle. I'm just going to start a fight as Leona, or I'm going to start a fight as Nautilus, or whatever. You can do that too, but sometimes that's riskier because you just don't know how your team's going to react to that. Are they going to follow up fast? Is there going to be someone random coming out of a bush that you didn't notice before, right? So maybe you think it's going to be a 3-on-3, and then their jungler shows up and flanks and kills your ADC, right? So you can do that as well, but just make sure you have good vision control around the place that you're going to fight in, just so you can avoid those flanks and you can make informed decisions about who to grab, and then just kind of play it from there and just go for those high probability chances. Another thing might be appeal. Now this is something else you can do with like a Leona or a Nautilus, but just think, what does the rest of your team have? So do they have other people that can engage? Does your team have a Sejuani? Do they have a Set? You know, and those types of things. If that's the case, and if they're trying to dive your AD carry, you have a really strong AD carry like a Kog'Maw who's, you know, 10-1 or something like that, and your Nautilus, the better play might be just like use your ultimate to start a fight on somebody, but then save your Q and save your auto attacks to peel the Hecarim who's going to try to dive your Nautilus, or to peel the Wukong who's going to try to dive your Kog'Maw rather. Right, so just think about how are you going to manage your cooldowns, right? Are you going to peel for your AD carry? Are you going to engage and kill their AD carry? I mean, sometimes it's worthwhile to peel for your AD carry if they're really fed. Sometimes if your AD carry is a turkey or is constantly making bad decisions, it might be a better idea to peel for somebody else. Maybe you want to peel for your Azir from the mid lane, or maybe you want to peel for your Kindred jungle or something like that, right? So just think about, who do you want to protect or who do you want to disable on the enemy team, right? So maybe it's worth leaving your own Ezreal out high and dry to deal with the Hecarim, as long as you're locking down their Vayne and making sure that she dies. Maybe a trade is okay, right? But maybe it's not okay. You know, if their Vayne is 0-5 and your Ezreal's 9-0, you don't want to be using all of your resources to try to kill that Vayne, because she's not going to do anything. You want to protect your Ezreal because they have all the power. So if you're not sure, just look at the kills on the team. That's not the best way to do it, but if you're just not sure of different power levels of different champs, if you're newer, just look at the kills and protect the person on your team who has the most kills most of the time. Just make sure they don't die. And then finally, you know, just for fights, just think about a specific mission, right? Just, what is your mission? Okay, and just think about it, just one sentence if you can. Stop Zed from killing the ADC. Lock down Kog'Maw. Do not let him sit there in free fire. Stop Katarina from using her ult. Do not let her use her ult. Right? And then just think about, how do I do this? What can I do? So if it's the Katarina thing, maybe you save your hook to hit the Katarina. If it's the Kog'Maw thing, maybe you're using all of your cooldowns to get on the Kog'Maw. If it's the stop Zed, you know, maybe you're not going to shield. Maybe your Hecarim's going in for an ultimate into the fight. Maybe you are Lulu or something, and instead of speeding up that Hecarim to go in with your W and using your ult on him, once he gets into the fight, maybe you don't do that. Maybe you let the Hecarim go in and you save your ultimate, you save your polymorph, and all of that for the Hecarim that's going to dive your AD carry. Or the Zed, in this case, is going to dive your AD carry. So just think, and it's going to depend on champions and matchups and all that stuff, but just think about it as a mission. Here's my one simple sentence. This is what I need to accomplish. If I do that, it gives our team the best chance of winning. And sometimes it's not that simple. Sometimes it needs to be a mix. Like, okay, I'm going to engage with Rakan and, you know, try to knock up the Kog'Maw, and then I'm going to shield back and try to peel, you know, the Zed off of the ADC. But just in general, especially if you're newer to the game, it's better to just have one focused central purpose than to try to achieve a whole bunch of different things that are just going to be too complicated, right? So just single one track mind. This is what I'm going to do, and just focus on that one task. Just make sure that happens. What's the best thing I think I can do to help my team win these fights, and do that. Okay. And then the final thing, just the last couple of minutes here. This is a little bit more advanced, but just play an efficient champ. Now, check out my other video where I talked about how do enchanters carry, and I talk about this a lot because enchanters are extremely efficient with their items, like Ardent Censer, Athene's Unholy Grail, all of that stuff. So try to play champs that get cheap items, something in like that 2,000 to 2,300 range. In general, don't try to play champs that are really expensive, that need like 3,000 gold items. So I recommend not buying stuff like Lichbane on Sona, or, you know, playing Xerath with Ludens, or Vel'Koz with Ludens. You can do that. It's fine. There are a lot of people that find success with that. But I think especially if you're newer, you want the cheap items and you want efficiency, so that way if you fall behind, or if your team falls behind, you can always get back into the game, because they're just going to be powerful champions in general. You also want consistent gameplay, right? So you just want to lower the amount of decisions you have to pick champions where their mission is very clear, and that's going to make it much easier to manage these team fights. Because if you're playing something like Thresh and you're newer to the game, you're going to be thinking, who do I hook? Who do I flay? Who do I throw this lantern to? It's so complicated. It's going to make your life a lot tougher. Versus someone like Sona, it's just like, okay, just spam all of my auras and use my ultimate on the person who's trying to kill my ADC. Boom. Simple. So have those simple teamfight missions, and a little bit more advanced, something that complements your team. Right, so if you're playing something like, if your ADC is playing something like Kog'Maw or Twitch, or something that scales really high with attack speed, try to play an Ardent Censer champion. If your ADC is playing something like Draven that really wants to get kills early, try to play an early aggressive champ that can lock down and get kills, like a Leona, like a Nautilus. Now that's a little bit more advanced, and I do have other videos on that, and we're running out of time, but just keep that in mind. However, you know, at the end of the day, most people play this game for fun, unless you're a professional or a content creator where your ranking matters. So just play things that are interesting to you, play things that you enjoy. But if you're really serious about climbing, if you do want to climb a lot, the champions do matter increasingly. As you move up and up the ladder, the champs that you play and the meta and which champs are strong, which ones are weak, do matter more and more and more. Okay, but that's going to be it for this video. So hopefully this helped you out as a newer player, kind of understand, 5 different things you can work on over time to help you win more games. If you enjoyed this content, please be sure to like and subscribe. It helps out a ton. There will be some pop-up with some more videos here at the end if you want to click on those. If you enjoy it, check that out. And come by, check out the stream. We stream every night starting around 11 p.m. Eastern Standard Time, only on YouTube, not Twitch, YouTube. And we'd love to have you. If you want to sponsor or guide yourself, email me. Let me know what you have in mind. And otherwise, we'll see you next time. Have a good day.